Welcome to Queen City Cyber Consulting's channel.
Welcome back, everyone, to Queen City Cyber Consulting. I hope you're all doing well. Today, we are going to talk about a very popular topic in the world of incident response and threat intelligence, and that is Mitre ATT and how you, as a SOC analyst, as a digital forensic examiner, as a threat intelligence analyst, can use Mitre ATT during a triage event, or really during practically uh, any stage in the cybersecurity process, even during research. Mitre ATT is a free tool that is out there and available on the internet. I'll include the link to their site in the comments for this video. And I've shown it to you before, but this time we're going to go a little bit more in depth into it. Make sure you watch, and then make sure that you keep an eye out on the channel, because I'm going to be putting up a scenario after this to walk through this process in a simulated scenario, if you will, so that you can do a little hands-on with this and learn uh, how to use Mitre ATT to perform triage and threat intelligence and things that you're going to need to know in the real world. Not only in the real world, but you're also probably going to have to deal with these things during even interview processes. A lot of times you'll go to an interview. How they typically work is you talk to a recruiter, then they pass you on to somebody within the company, and then you get to the technical team, and then you have to do what they call a technical interview. And during that technical interview, you'll get grilled on some of the terms that we're encountering throughout this video series. You'll get grilled on some practical hands-on things. Some of them can be very straightforward, and others of them can be very tricky. So whenever you're getting ready to go into a technical interview, always prep beforehand. I love to tell people that. Um, I sadly went in not expecting a technical interview because I'd already had one for a job in the past, and walked into an interview where I thought I'd be talking to the VP of the company, and I got bombed with high level, in depth technical interview for which I was not prepared. And unfortunately, that happens. So, the best thing you can do is refresh your memory, refresh your skills, keep them ready to go, so that if that happens, you can walk into it confident and do a good job. So, what is the triage mindset? Well, there are all kinds of terms we're going to hit in this video that you're going to see again and again in the industry, so keep them in mind. Alert overload versus threat context. Now, nearly any job, but mostly in the SOC, whether you're a SOC 1 analyst, SOC 2, SOC 3, or even working as incident response or a threat intelligence analyst, you're going to deal with alerts. And alerts work in any number of ways. We'll probably have to do an entire video series on that because they can come in from various sources. And we're not going to delve into that in this video in order to stay focused on Mitre ATT and using it to identify attacker behavior. So first, let's talk about atomic alerting. That is your more traditional type of alerting that your SIEM's going to do, that your SOAR is going to do, your firewall, your EDR. They work on the atomic level. And we'll explore the atomic level briefly here shortly. So what is this? Well, it focuses primarily on individual IOCs, such as file hashes or domain names or IP addresses. These alerts will trigger without really explaining any intent or possible immediate next steps. So, for example, if a domain name has been flagged as malicious, you'll get an alert for a system possibly reaching out to that domain, but that's it. It's up to you as the analyst to figure out why that alert triggered in the first place. So you're coming from the low level atomic alert and having to figure out what is happening here. Is this a one-off? Is this someone browsing the internet and accidentally going to the wrong site, which in the real world does happen? Is it a possible command and control domain or IP? Is it a real suspicious file hash, or is it misidentified by the system that filed the alert? So what attack enables you to do, moving over here, is you begin to map the behavior. So you can actually put into visual representation what's going on within the adversary lifecycle. It tells the analyst where the attacker is right now, and then will highlight logical paths for where they may be going next. And that's important to understand. These aren't necessarily the paths an attacker is going to go down, but they're logical paths that they could be going down. Sometimes you might immediately be able to identify what the behavior is, what's happening, and move the alert to the next level of SOC 2 or SOC 3 and further the investigation. Other times you may have to dig at it. It may be something that you've never seen before, and attack can really help you be able to get a handle on that. And then here, real quick, this is Mitre ATT. This is for credential access, which we will be looking at here shortly. They have three main matrices here. This is the enterprise matrix right here. And as you can see, it's got all kinds of information on it, and it can be overwhelming at first when somebody first starts messing around with this, but don't let it become the dragon in your brain. It is something you can learn to use, and the more you use it, the better you get with it. So let's look at a 4-step mapping workflow. So first, telemetry. That's where you get those raw alerts, that raw information, everything from command lines to API calls, process trees, log files. That's all flowing into your SIM, flowing into your EDR, whatever program it is that's sending you this alert. That's basic telemetry. The tactic is the why. So you need to identify what the adversary is trying to do. Are they at the initial access stage, just getting in? Have they already gotten in and now they're executing programs, malicious programs within the environment? Or are they using LOLs, live off the land, uh, executables, which that's something for a whole nother video as well. Persistence, is it a persistence mechanism that you've identified within the environment? Are they trying to access credentials, which we just looked at real briefly on Mitre? And then the technique, exactly what are they doing here? What's the operational mechanism? What is it? And the example that they use here is PowerShell scripting. You'll see that in many, many attacks. Attackers love PowerShell. Some major organizations that I've worked for actually restrict PowerShell usage within their enterprise environment to only certain people, like their programmers or software developers. Your basic end users have PowerShell disabled on their systems to prevent an attacker from getting in and using PowerShell. It's a great practical step in defense. If you can identify who may use it, who doesn't need it, then restrict those who don't need it, but allow access for those who do. The pyramid of pain is something that you'll see again and again as you study these topics and as you talk about cybersecurity. So here's a brief introduction. Pyramid of pain basically works up from what's tough for an adversary to change all the way up to what is easy for the adversary to change. So you've got your behavioral, which we mentioned, and then we've got atomic or computed, which are cheap and easily rotated. So you got your tactics, techniques, and processes. Remember that TTP from previous video. Then you have the tools that they use, and a lot of times attackers, hackers, they have a favorite set of tools, and they'll download that set of tools to use. And it's like a mechanic has his own set of tools that he likes, that he's familiar with, that his He's used so often that they're molded to his hand, so to speak. So they go back to it again and again and again. Then you have your network host artifacts, which would be things like your registry files, your event logs, your master file table, all those kinds of things. Your network traffic, in and out, could be from a router, it could be from a switch, it could be from the firewall. It just depends on how the network is set up to identify traffic on the network. Then you move into domain names. They change these all the time. Um, I mean, domain names are cheap. And once they get spotted in one attack, of course, the attackers will switch those around and use other domains so they can continue trying to attack companies and businesses. You have IP addresses, again, easy to change. You can use Tor, you could use a VPN. It's just simple. And then hash values are those unique identifiers for files that defenders will use to scan networks looking for malicious files. Attackers, all they have to do is change one bit in a file and it changes the entire hash. That's something for a whole nother video too. But what's important to remember, this pyramid of pain moves up. These down here at the bottom are very easy for them to change, whereas up here at the top, they're more durable and usually will be found again and again and again in various attack scenarios. Now, in the matrix attacks under the enterprise scope, there's 14 different enterprise attack methods. These tactics represent a high level look at what adversary's objectives would be throughout the attack lifecycle. If you're doing, say, a live triage, you're looking at a system, identifying these tactics immediately can kind of narrow down the over 600 sub techniques into a more manageable subset for analysis. And you'll get to see that right now as we come back over here and we look at the Mitre attack matrix. So as you can see, you've got reconnaissance, resource development, initial access, execution, persistence, privilege escalation, stealth, defense, impairment, credential access, and then it moves on past that. Let me see if I cannot get this down a little bit more so we can see it all. Where did we stop? Credential access, discovery, lateral movement, collection, and then there's still another one out here lurking off in the side, which this doesn't allow me to be able to get over there to it for whatever reason. Oh, there it is. Got it. Okay. All right, back up. Lateral movement, collection, command and control, exfil, and the impact of this attack that you are mapping out. So to walk through this, quite simply, in our presentation here, it has over 600 sub-techniques, which you'll get to see here in just a minute. So step number one in the investigation is extract the evidence. You're looking for processes that are running, and then you're looking for parent processes and process families or a lineage, looking for those parent-child relationships. For instance, command exe spawns PowerShell exe, which then runs a command, which could then launch yet another exe, which typically is what you'll see. But you've got to be able to build that parent-child relationship and look for something out of the ordinary. And then you have execution flags, looking for bypasses there, looking for encoded payloads, if you can spot those. And finally, the network and registry information, looking for trying to correlate the host actions with any C2 connections that are running on the network. Attackers love to write run keys and change the registry around. They'll even add users. So if it's a user you don't recognize or know, well, then that becomes suspect right away. And that's something you can go hunt for as far as evidence goes. In most cases, your playbooks should cover what kind of evidence you're going to examine during this initial event review and examination. That way, you've got a firm handle on what's available. Not all businesses monitor all of these things? Sad to say. If they don't, well, then it's up to you to figure out what you do have access to. And hopefully your playbook has that all laid out for you as well. Now, determining the tactics. So this is kind of figuring out the why. Why are they doing what they're doing? You can guess the intent without actually knowing the intent. And I need to make that clear. I've been involved in investigations where we thought the intent was data exfiltration. But as the investigation proceeded, that thought process changed and it went from data exfiltration to a simple, straightforward ransomware attack. What they were trying to do was not necessarily steal the data and exfil it out of the network, which you would think an attacker would want to do. No, in these cases, it was just destruction. They wanted to encrypt that network, demand a payment, and then maybe the victim would be able to get back access back to their data. That doesn't always work out, by the way. Not all ransomware actors are honorable thieves, and in many cases, not only did the decryptor not work, but it in fact contained more malicious malware that further infected the recovered network. So you got to be careful there. In fact, that's again, there's so much information in cybersecurity to learn. Um, One video is not going to do it. It has to be a series, just so you know. But if you can narrow the intent here, it's going to speed up your triage. For example, in the real world, back in the day, I did criminal investigations, and intent became a big player in that. One of my most favorite examples, I was working patrol, we were working nights. We got an alarm call at a local business, and what this business did was vending machine filling. They had vending machines all over town, and of course, their business was to keep those machines full and then rake in the coins from those machines. So they loaded up several trucks every day with Milky Ways and Snickers and Reese's cups and whatever candy you can think of, potato chip bags. I mean, goes on, and then go out and fill these up and gather in the coins. And so it was a pretty lucrative business, still is. And one night we get an alarm at their warehouse. So me and another officer, we go down for the alarm. Doors kicked open. Obviously a breaking and entering. What's the intent? Now that's where it becomes interesting. So what's the intent of the burglars? Are they there to steal the money? Are they there to just damage the business? Are they there for some other purpose? Well, as we are checking around the outside of the building, waiting for backup because you don't clear an entire warehouse with just two people, we see this line of empty candy wrappers going up the street and down an alley across the street from the business. So we start following this trail of candy wrappers. And down at the end of the alley in a street light, we see two male figures standing at the end of the alley. Well, of course, we challenge them. Stop right there. Don't move. We'll be right there. Well, try to take off running. We catch them. What? All they were doing, they were drunk. All they did was break in there to steal snacks. That was the intent. And they were trying to eat as many of them as they could before. When we caught them, they had mouths full of chocolate and even chocolate around their lips. So their intent wasn't destruction. It wasn't steal the money that was in the business. Their pure intent was basically they had the snackies after they were drunk, and that was what they thought was the easiest way to get some. So there you go. So finding out the intent can help with your investigation. Of course, at that point, it became less of a threat to search the building or identify any money stolen or anything like that. So back in our previous one, we looked at credential access. So let's bring back Mitre. Find it here. All right, here's Mitre. So let's find credential access real quick. So we have execution. Where is credential access? See, there's so many on here that sometimes, unless you're really familiar with it, You can get lost in the process trying to figure out where you're going. One of my favorites I just came across. I could tell you a whole nother story about that. And now I can't find credential access, which I did find before really quickly while I was preparing to do this video. Now all of a sudden I cannot find it. Huh. Probably because I had to blow it out so far. You can't really see a lot of what's going on. But here is OS credential dumping right here. So if we click on that, it takes us over here. It's under credential access, right? As you can see here on the left, credential access, and then all the different formats of that. And then we have credential dumping, and you have LSAS memory dumps, you have SAN files, NTDS, LSA secrets, blah, 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 on and on it goes. Etsy password and Etsy shadow are Linux systems, in case you were not familiar with them. So you've got all these different formats for credential access. Well, then you can begin to ask yourself questions leading toward intent. Are they stealing passwords at this point? Well, if they're attacking, say, LSAS memory right here, they may attempt to access credential material stored in the process memory of Local Security Authority Subsystem Service, or LSAS, as it's called, and steal the credentials. So they'll do a process dump, which they right here kind of give you a proc dump example. And like I said before, these are great ways to learn these attack methodologies. If you have the time and have the ability, you can come in here and spend days reading this material. And they have it both for this, they have it also for AI, which I showed in a previous video as well. They can go from here. Now, remember, we're tracking them looking for intent. So they could go from here into other forms of attack. They could then try the passwords on other systems. They could do all kinds of different things here. Uh, Once they could leave with the dump file, hack it offline, and then come back at a later date, even if they wanted to. So very important that you know all of these things. And like I said, I mean, we could go through this and look at all these are threat actors down here who've used this technique before. And the list is long because they show up almost every time. Once you get into this world and begin learning, these terms are going to pop up to you. Like QLAN is a ransomware group. You have Threat Group 3390. You have Volt Typhoon, which you'll see again and again in different attacks. So, um, oil rigs, another popular one. NotPetya is another one. Mimikatz is a great big tool that's used out there. So I can click on Mimikatz, which tells you it's a credential dumper capable of obtaining plain text windows. Uh, so you'll see Mimikatz come up on tests. They'll want you to know what Mimikatz is. And I've run across it in different job interviews as well, because they want you to at least have a familiarity with these tools that the attackers are using. The question that I was presented with is, during your triage efforts, you find that Mimikatz has been installed on the system. What does that mean to you? And I answered, it's a credential dumper. So they're attempting to steal passwords. So then the next question became, okay, what are you going to do next? Well, you can move on. You could say, well, it's time for password resets. It's time to expand the search, because if they're stealing passwords, maybe they moved on to another system. You could go all different angles with that at that point in time. But knowing what Mimikatz is at least gets you on the way. Now, once you identify that specific ID technique, and you can begin to determine what the attacker's intent is and then move forward with your investigation. So we've looked at the technique and the sub technique here. So you have like command scripting interpreter. The sub technique under that would be PowerShell. So going back over here real quick, in our previous look here, we looked at credential access And then underneath it, you have all the different ones, the sub techniques that fall in down here. You've got unsecured credentials, and you'll see that. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've done a forensic investigation and found an Excel spreadsheet with the file name, passwords, in plain text sitting on the desktop of different systems. So, I mean, you will definitely see that come in and again and again. And then the procedure example, which they give you in the MITRE matrix, refers to real world execution syntax or even malware implementation and what it's used by. For example, APT 29. Now, we talked about that looking at MITRE, so we're not going to spend a lot of time there. Here's just some mapping examples. So you've got your process telemetry comes in, it's PowerShell.exe with a hidden flag attached. That's going to be execution, and your technique and ID. Then you would go straight to the PowerShell, click on it, and then look at the sub techniques to see what might be happening. If it's a Kerberos log, again, you've got different ways to go through that process. A sysmon event, number 13, you over here, it's persistence, and you can search for it under registry run keys. All of those are contained in this threat matrix that is put out by MITRE. All of it's in here. The thing you have to learn to do is you've got to at least have an understanding of the topics and then how to deep dive into them. And I'll be getting another video up here in the next day or so, I hope, to give you a practical scenario to walk through that you can work your way through in order to get some practice with MITRE ATT&CK. The golden rules for speeding up triage. And triage needs to be fairly fast. There are things out there called service level agreements or SLAs. So say you're working with a managed security service provider or you're in a SOC. A company signs on for your services. Well, part of that signing on includes an SLA, which means if an alert comes in, you have a set amount of time to react to the alert, investigate the alert, and make a determination on whether to notify the customer or institute further investigation. That's all a service level agreement is. And it can range depending on the severity, of course, of the alert, on the needs of the customer. It could be anywhere from the initial triage in an hour to 2 hours to 5 hours. I've seen them out to 8 hours because some companies just don't get a lot of alerts. It just depends, but you need to be aware of that because speed does come into play. And this is how MITRE can help you speed that up. So map your primary behavior first. What's the alert? What's it set on? And then go down, deep dive into the sub techniques during your investigation. If a SIM's running and it's got automated rules set up, it can misclassify generic tool usage. So what you need to do is validate that against the raw command arguments, against the whitelisted tools within the environment. And then you can use your mappings from MITRE ATT&CK to pivot. So once you see Kerberoasting is identified as a technique, now you know you need to start looking for lateral movement because the attacker is trying to move off of patient zero and further ingratiate themselves into the environment. The life cycle, of course, the alert ingestion is where the EDR or the SIM alert, and then they extract that raw telemetry and present it in the alert. And then you can have MITRE running on another screen. And as that alert comes in, you can start looking at the attack map and start deep diving into some of those techniques. Hopefully, you can identify it within a minute. And then if there's a pivot in there, it's where you need to start making determinations on what the intent of the adversary is. And then what's your proper response and is containment necessary at that point in time? Do you escalate to tier 2, tier 3? Do you activate the incident response process? Whatever it may take. And MITRE ATT&CK can help you get there and give you an easy way to explain your thought process as well. So that's a lot to digest. Welcome to the cybersecurity world. I'm going to get that scenario prepared, hopefully, and have it up, if not later today, maybe later tomorrow, if not Monday. Unfortunately, I have a busy couple of days coming up ahead of me. So I'll try to get it prepped. I'm already working on it and take the time to do it. But thank you all. Take the quiz at the end of this, answer those questions, use them as a way to study, as a way to ingrain all of this terminology and all these things into your brain pan so that you can remember them come test time and you don't feel overwhelmed. Thank you. Have a great day. Go forth and conquer.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.